The story is set in a house and begins by showing an older man named Mahler. He is sitting calmly, smoking. Mahler then retrieves some items from his refrigerator, places them in a plastic bag, and heads out with the food. In the next scene, Mahler is shown arriving at his daughter Anna's apartment. When he sees her, Anna appears indifferent, painting her nails and barely acknowledging his presence. Apparently something has caused tension between them. Mahler has brought food from his home, intending to share a meal with Anna, but instead she heads off to work, saying she plans to eat there. Hearing this, Mahler can only remain silent at his daughter's cool reaction. Left alone, he finishes the meal he brought, looking genuinely hurt. When he's done eating, he stores the leftover food in Anna's fridge and notices a photograph on the door. The photo includes Anna and a young boy. Mahler also straightens up Anna's unmade bed. After putting everything in order, he returns to his own place. The scene transitions to an older woman named Elizabeth. She is shown looking at her partner for what seems to be the final time, since her partner, Tora, is already in a coffin, ready to be buried. After a moment of reflection, Elizabeth drives herself home. Upon arrival, her telephone rings, but when she answers, the line goes dead. Elizabeth does indeed live alone in a large, quiet house and has no other relatives, leaving her simply waiting out her remaining days without Tora. The film then shifts focus again, introducing a seemingly harmonious family. A father named David, a mother named Ava, and their 2 children, Flora and Kian. In this scene, Eva instructs Flora, her eldest child, to look after Kian for a while, as Ava plans to leave the house briefly. David also needs to go out to perform at his job, entertaining people, because he is a stand-up comedian. They depart separately. Eva drives her own car, while David travels by a different means. Night falls before they realize it, and Eva has been driving alone for several hours. Suddenly, her car radio turns on by itself multiple times, distracting her. Combined with her fatigue, this causes her to lose control, resulting in an accident. However, the crash itself is not depicted. Meanwhile, David, who has just finished working, receives a call from the hospital informing him that Eva was involved in an accident. Heartbroken, he rushes to the hospital, but the doctors are unable to save her life. Even though the medical team tried to operate, in the end, David can only grieve as his wife, Eva, lies there without any sign of life. Elsewhere, Mahler is at a cemetery, sitting near a still fresh grave. Suddenly, a very high-frequency sound is heard, causing Mahler intense pain in his ears until he collapses. That mysterious sound also disrupts electricity across the entire city, causing a total blackout. Fortunately, the disturbance is brief, and power is soon restored. Up to this point, it remains unclear what generated the sound and why. Once Mahler regains consciousness, he moves his vehicle so it faces the newly dug grave. He does this not simply for lighting, but because he intends to unearth the grave himself. Mahler begins digging. As it turns out, the grave he is reopening contains the remains of his grandson, Elias, Anna's son, whose passing has burdened Anna with unending sorrow, affecting her bond with her father. Mahler, for his part, loved his only grandchild deeply. The scene returns to Elizabeth, who has been asleep. She senses someone else in the house and makes her way to the kitchen, where she finds Tora standing there. Elizabeth is consumed by mixed feelings, confusion, sadness, and a trace of joy. Seeing someone she loved so dearly apparently returned. Yet Tora's movements resemble those of someone not truly alive, and she says nothing. Meanwhile, at the hospital, David sits beside Eva's body. Although declared deceased by the medical staff, Eva's mouth suddenly twitches. Alarmed, David rushes to inform a doctor, who checks Eva again. The doctor admits they remain unsure about this rare occurrence. In all their experience, they have never encountered a patient pronounced dead, who then shows signs of revival. The medical team decides to conduct a thorough examination on Eva, who currently displays a weak heartbeat and minimal oxygen levels. During this process, no one, David included, is allowed to see her, so David reluctantly returns home to wait. Upon arriving, he explains to Flora that her mother passed away in the accident, but strangely revived, and is now under intensive examination. Mahler, meanwhile, has successfully brought his grandson's body to Anna's apartment. He lays Elias down, then begins caring for him, giving him eye drops, washing and cleaning his still dusty form. When done, Mahler places Elias in Anna's bedroom, murmuring that his mother would be returning soon. Before continuing, here is a bit more background. After that mysterious high-frequency noise rang out, some individuals who had passed away only days earlier appeared to come back. Elias is one such case, having been exhumed by Mahler, while Tora suddenly showed up at Elizabeth's home, and Eva revived at the hospital even after doctors pronounced her dead. Moving on, Anna finishes her shift at a restaurant, and finally returns home. The moment she switches on the bedroom light, she is taken aback by the sight of her child there, though he had previously been declared deceased. She steps out immediately in disbelief. In the kitchen, in a moment of desperation, Anna places a plastic wrap around her head, as if intending to end her own life, overwhelmed that her child, thought gone forever, is suddenly on the bed, as if alive. The attempt leaves Anna unconscious, but she is saved by Mahler, her father. Shortly thereafter, the following day arrives, and Anna appears more accepting of her beloved child's return, even though his condition is vastly different, almost zombie-like. She then asks her father to take Elias to the hospital, but Mahler refuses. He worries that the authorities would confiscate Elias and potentially imprison both of them for what he did the previous night, exhuming a body already laid to rest, an act deemed criminal despite it being the remains of his own family member. Indeed, not long afterward, the police arrive at Anna's apartment, prompting Mahler to instruct Anna to remain silent and avoid meeting the officers to avoid losing Elias again. Meanwhile, at the cemetery where Elias had been buried, the police are seen covering the opened grave with an excavator, effectively sealing it back up. The scene then shifts to Elizabeth, who is cleaning and dressing Tora, just as she once did in earlier times. When Elizabeth finishes, she prepares sandwiches and tries to feed Tora. Suddenly, Tora eats in an unsettlingly brisk manner, reminiscent of a zombie. Elsewhere, Mahler and Anna bring Elias to a remote cabin located on an island far, far away from the city, a place they choose to escape the authorities now searching for them. Once they arrive, they focus on tidying up and organizing the cabin. The story then cuts to David's household, where he still waits for an update from the hospital. Up to this point, he has received no concrete news on Eva's condition and has not been allowed to see her. Meanwhile, David's daughter, Flora, spends her time riding on a motorbike with a friend, perhaps as a way to cope with her worry about her mother's situation. In another part of town, Elizabeth appears with a bouquet of flowers, placing them beside Tora. She also switches on some music and dances with Tora, much as she did back when Tora was still alive. Beyond that, Elizabeth continues to share her room and bed with Tora, feeling no fear at all. While Tora was once her dearest companion, the fact remains that Tora is no longer the same as before, now existing in a reanimated state. The next day happens to be Kian's birthday. Upon waking, Kian receives a simple surprise from David and Flora. David gifts him a small rabbit, hoping that once Eva is well enough to leave the hospital, she too can see it. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Mahler and Anna attempt to entertain Elias with a remote-controlled toy. Elias's body now stands upright, though the movements look strained. Worried that her son might be in pain, Anna tells Mahler to stop the game. Mahler complies and steps outside, checking their remaining supplies of drinking water. Seeing that they are nearly out, he decides to leave the island briefly to gather more. During his departure, Mahler notices a figure resembling one of the undead trailing him into the water. Returning to David's storyline, he wants to fulfill Kian's wish of letting Eva see the rabbit he received. This aligns with news from the hospital granting them permission to visit. Once they arrive at the hospital, David tells Eva that it's Kian's birthday. Kian then shows his newly acquired pet to Eva. For a moment, Eva appears moved, even shedding a tear as she holds the rabbit. Suddenly, however, she grips the animal too tightly, and the rabbit cries out in pain. David tries to intervene, but it's too late, and the small creature loses its life in Eva's grasp. Elsewhere, Anna goes for a swim in the lake near the cabin, presumably to clear her head. Afterward, she sees something so startling that she rushes back inside and bolts all the doors and windows. It soon becomes evident that another undead figure has made its way into the cabin area and is now tapping against the windows. Not long afterward, Mahler returns with 2 jugs of water. Anna immediately warns him that a menacing presence is nearby, urging that they flee the cabin at once. In a rash display of courage, Mahler confronts the figure, attempting to strike it with a wooden plank. Unfortunately, he is overpowered and is fatally attacked. Meanwhile, at Elizabeth's home, Tora is seen leaning against the bedroom door. Elizabeth herself lies motionless with a grievous wound on her face, suggesting that the now transformed Tora has inflicted fatal harm upon her. Seeing her father killed, Anna quickly departs the island in a rowboat, bringing Elias along. That same undead being from before attempts to pursue, but Anna manages to row away swiftly. Elsewhere, in another touching moment, Keon buries his rabbit with deep sadness, quietly singing. David also feels profound grief at what has happened to his family. Before the tragedy, they were content and hopeful, but now their future is full of uncertainty. In the film's final scene, Anna continues rowing until she can go no further. She pauses in the middle of the lake, gently telling Elias how much she loves him. Fully understanding that she must finally release him, Anna makes the difficult decision to let Elias's body slip into the water for good. With this poignant act, the film ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.